So I thought it would be interesting to go through one of the level or two of the levels or some of the shots I did for Ghost Recon Breakpoint episode 2 and kind of break down the game level lighting that I did, because I spent some of my time helping people on Discord and different places, and we talk a lot about lighting and post-processing and look development, and I realize I'm taking certain things for granted, and I get a lot of questions about it. Do you use fake lighting? Do you use realistic lighting? How do you do it? Now, I realized that it depends on the project, it depends on the studio as well. For instance, on Ghost Recon Breakpoint episode 2, because of the powerful engine Ubisoft has, you don't necessarily have to use a lot of fake lighting, and a lot of it just bounces around and does the work, so there's more fine-tuning in terms of the settings for the lighting to get the desired effect. While in some other engines you might be using multiple lights to sort out your challenges. So I thought it would be interesting just to go through some of the shots, and if it's obvious, I'm happy for you. If you learn something new, cool. And for me, it's also a refreshment, so I don't forget everything. So let's get started. So for this particular shot, you can obviously see there are a couple of light sources, right? You see there's a light source here. Let's put it a bit smaller. So there's a light source here, there's a light source here, 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 and here. Obviously there are some other places as well. Now, if I remember correctly, for this particular shot, this one over here, let me just do it like this. This one is going somewhat like this, and then there's another light on top, kind of having a longer range to get most of the distance. That said, this one doesn't have a lot, this doesn't have a lot, this one goes up to fill light over here, and these are generally to fill up the dark spots that was coming on the walls. This doesn't do much. Now, the key when you were doing this kind of lighting is to do more with less. So, for example, if we look at this one over here, this one over here, that's an actual light. You can see this one has very simple lighting, and a lot of the work goes into the bloom and the flares and the glare to kind of make the light pop a bit. Now, what's noticeable here though is these lights. Now, for any experienced eye, you will notice there's actually just one light here. This light is lighting like this. So a lot of the trick in Ubisoft Breakpoint is to use a lot of lights when needed, but they only are visually there. They're not actually light for each of those light fixtures. And when I say light fixtures, I mean the props. There's 5 of them here. So it looks like it's lighting a lot because it's supposed to light a lot, but there's only one light source, so there's only one cost, right? The expenses are not that high. And there's also one light source in here covering most of the area. Okay? Let's see if I remember this one. So this one is similar. There's actually 2 light fixtures. You can see there's one over here and there's one over here. But in terms of light, there's one light source, and it's actually just casting down right there. The key here is to find out the distance and the radius of the light and how much you can cover one area with one light source. So naturally I tried to tweak the settings a bit so I could get it to light the different areas with just one light source, which is quite demanding, and it requires a lot of work to get that right with just one light source. In some projects depending on the art direction and the type of game, you do end up having to use a lot of light because of their request and they wanted effect. But in Ubisoft, what was interesting was you ended up using fewer lights with smaller radius, which is often the case anyway, but here it's very particular. You have the same context here as well. You have multiple light sources, light fixtures. You can see those in the background, and here as well, but it's 2 light sources here in this case. There's one that goes down, and you can see there's one on the side which might have been removed actually by the end. So here again, the total light sources here are in fact there's one here, there's one here, there's one here, there's about one here, and there's about one here. So there's total 5 lights, maybe 6 it was, to light up this whole area to create that contrast of Splinter Cell. That's about dark and sneaky, right? This light is also just one light trying to cover a lot of area. So this one has a lot of range, so this covers a large area. The same goes for this one over there, and there's a small light coming over here. These are all small lights. Now the key here is these are lights would have been expensive otherwise, because when you have this kind of lighting, you don't want them to have too much of a range. Again, the idea was to have a contrast and a mood, right? So they have a pretty specific range and setting for them, because with the type of technology Ubisoft has, you have the ability to control, let's say, the direction of the light, even though it's a spotlight or a point light. So a lot of the time is spent to use certain of the features, which I can't talk too much about, to get the look you want, to replicate the light source, right? I might have put some light in the back also. I think these are the actual light sources right here, and they are again meant to create a mood, but also fill up some of the spots that are dark in some areas, to see the shape and form of the rocks, so you can see that they kind of go up and down, right? So this is like because this is from when you enter the level, you get exposure values up and down, right? So it looks a lot darker from where you're standing, which is one of the challenges when working with this particular game and project. Is the exposure values is they change constantly, and they have a very fixed setting, so you have to deal with that. So you can see here again that that's one light source, that's 2, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, 6th, 7, and it's around 8. Then there's a 9th one. Now this particular one again is very particular in that it's just going a certain direction to light up the area. These one, you can see they are there, but you don't necessarily see them due to the exposure. And certain lights they turn on after the alarm goes on as well, so the mood changes and the dynamic changes. So this is where we are looking down from the previous shot. You come in here, and this is what you look at basically. And here you can see it. There's a light source here, here, here. There's one over here. There's also light source coming in from the room behind, for that matter. There's a light source here and here. There might be here and here as well. Now these are again meant to highlight certain areas, create shape and form, but also just to give a reason to the amount of light, right? Because you have to keep in mind that even though you see these light source, the range of some of the spotlights, they're pretty large to cover a lot of the areas, which is why you also end up seeing less shadow, because the expenses are pretty high. You can see here that's the light source I was talking about. It's covering a lot of area. You can see it's to fill up the room, right? You can see the hotspots are matching, and you can see it's pretty bright. It might be too bright, but it works, right? These are the area before you go into this part of the level. Here I was trying to create a sense of tension and mood that you have like light placed around to create the mood. So these have a certain range as well. They do go quite a bit, right? To create the mood. Might be a bit too much in some cases, might be too bright in some cases, but again it's to give the sense of path so the player knows where to walk while it still have this tension. You can see here again, this is the exposure at play. When you are at some darker areas, you'll see the contrast much easier. You can also much easier see the range of the light is going a bit. Now you would think there's some fake lighting. There's no fake lighting. There's no extra light. This is just one light doing the job. Here you can see again there's a light source here and sorry, and obviously you can see that there's one light source here as well that's going down to light up the corridors so the player knows where to go and what to look at any given time, so to speak, right? This is the same as well. You can see there's a very strong lighting here. You can see there's a contrast from the darker areas, and it's very clear where I want the player to be going. Again, there's a lot more to it naturally, because we're talking about a lot of intricate, detailed, complex settings that might be needed to get the desired look, and a lot of optimization also happens. Here again you can see there's a light source. Here again it's to show off the area, you know, and also when the characters move around you want to be able to see them, right? It's the same here, just lights placed around to lead the player, while there is, as you can see, there is a darker area here. So it uses the pool theory. It's like that basically means that there's a warm spot, or there's a light spot, then there's a dark spot, then there's a light spot, dark spot, and then there's a light spot. So you have like this shape and form and gradient occurring to the lighting. Here again, we want to make sure that the player knew, like at any given time, that there are objects around and there might be players or characters around. And obviously this is also used because everything is real time. There's not bait lighting at all. So that basically means this is real time GI going on, so to speak, even though there is some baking going on, which is a completely different topic I can't talk about either. So here you can see that we also use this type of lighting to tell the player by having the enemies cast shadow. So you'll see them if you don't hear them using the shadows, right? So if you're walking around, you know, you can see that there's a shadow being cast, especially if you were to come from another direction. Again, it's to lead the player, create a sense of hotspot. Of course, the color picked is also on purpose, is to create like a sense of cold color. Here you can see I started placing some top-down lighting to create some shape that goes up towards the rock. This is also the case from the water, a couple of lights coming up. This is only noticeable during nighttime. There's a different look during daytime. Here's outside during night. This is in the beginning for the mission, before you go through each area, and you can see that there's an exterior light being put out, and this is just to let the players spot the entrance easier. This was a bit tedious scene, as you can see. Didn't spend too much time here at the end due to the release date being pushed forward in time, but there was a couple of issues in getting the light to bake properly here. But you can see the details. You can see what you need to see as you go into this particular scene. These are some other areas, which is you do some lighting, you place out some lights here. A lot of it depends on getting some light coming in. We have certain technology to do that and to exclude it for that matter. But there is basically a couple of lights around there to make sure that the area is lit. This is during daytime, so they are off during daytime, and during night they come on. Here's another area for another mission. you're supposed to come here and you're supposed to disable a few things. Here you can see this idea is to really have a contrast and to show the logo of the company, of the building. So when you're coming this way, it's very clear what's going on. You can see all the lights from the building in here, and you also see the two entrances, and you can see there's something you can do down below if you want to as well. So once you go down, there might be something. So you have this light showing that there's a way up if you fall down, for example, and so forth. Once you're inside, a couple of small lights going on to show that there is a stair or a ladder, and it's to show that you can go up. There's exterior lighting coming in, as you can see, to light some of the areas during daytime. During night, this light turns on, for example, and as you see, these also turn on during the night time. This as well, you can see, is fighting against the daylight, so you don't actually see it on, but it's still on. You can see some of the light coming in here. Again, in this case, there's just one light source. There's no cheating. There's a lot of tweaking going on to make this work, though. There's another one. You can see there are other light sources from natural light coming in, doing most of the work. In this particular shot, you can see that there is a light coming here, and there's a small light here, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure if I removed it or not. You can also see there's a light there, just in case the player looks down, you can see that there is something going downstairs as well, but there's no access. So questionably, I'm not sure I should have done that or not, because normally when I do lighting, I want the player to be able to access it. The issue there is if you do look down, you might think you can access it because there is some detail and there is a door. And I don't remember at the end if the mission design actually allowed you to go in there. Again, you can see there's some lighting here. These are called out to light up the directions. And these are the same to create the shape and form and to fill in the darkness a little bit. As you can see, it's the same here. There's only one light here, or even though there are multiple light fixtures, there are in fact several light sources to fill in the darker areas, and you can see them trying to put light around to make sure that there are shape and form in different areas of the level. Again, GI is pretty powerful, so it does most of the work. Here you can see there's one light source, it's this one over here. There's another one in here, which has the opposite color, so there's a blue color inside, and then there is a warmer color out here. Now that's on purpose, that the area in general has a color palette and a color code from room to room. They all have the same one. Outside there's a different color, and then inside the room there's a different color, and that's on purpose because it's pretty strong. You can see here the core light being cast from a very little one, and then you can see that there's one here as well. Right, and of course a lot of work goes also into making sure that the reflection works when you do the lighting, and the intensity works. In terms of the intensity, we follow from the Wikipedia. In this case, you can see there are exposure settings that I mentioned here. So it says 5 to 7. So basically, in the interior, I'm making sure that according to the setup and the calculation of the engine we have at Ubisoft when I used to work there, it's no more than 7 and no less than 5. So that's what we're doing when we're doing the lighting, is we are making sure that the office areas are 7 to 8 to make sure that it fits a realistic lighting and intensity and exposure. That is not the case when I'm working at interior nights right now. It's very much creative lighting and mood lighting, and not necessarily exposure based. If it serves the story and mood, we tend to go for that over anything else, but it still has to look believable naturally. So these are the settings we look for, and these are the EV we have set up already in build when I used to work at Ubisoft. So normally I would go in there at the beginning when I started to get used to things, and I would just look at the EV, and I would look at the graph, the histogram, and I would make sure that it matches that number It's a lot harder to do that obviously if you use Unreal Engine or Unity Engine, so that's understandable. Again, here you can see there's a different light sources to show the path, and I'm using the big light that you saw earlier that's up here. I'm using that mostly to give most of the fill light here, and that's expensive because it's casting shadow. Because it's casting shadow all over here, you can turn it off, then you can use other lights to kind of tweak it. It's the same here. There's a lot of light. It's a lot of things. This one is actually pretty cool. There's something going on there as well. Here you can see there's one light and then there's another light. There's two light sources. There's one light here. There's two light sources here. They needed to be tweaked quite a lot in terms of range. Now the biggest workload here, besides the exposure settings and getting everything correctly, is generally the range that they need to be set out, because they can't go too far, and normally this amount of light would go further. So in that sense, arguably it's not realistic. So they would have certain settings to make sure that they actually just stop right here. So these would stop right there, so you get the glimpse but no further. These are the same cases here. They have a certain range so they don't overlap with the other real-time lights, because that would be too expensive. As you look around, you're looking for shadow casters when you do the lighting, and it shouldn't be too many, and that's a lot of work as well to make sure that all of these lights that are everywhere, that they don't have too much of range and they're not on the screen at the same time. That's why this is one light source as well. And that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. I might make a shorter video for one of the dialogue lighting I did, because I didn't log into the game. I'm not playing the whole game to find all of the stuff I did, so we'll just maybe do like 5 minutes on my dialogue lighting if you want. But like, subscribe, leave a message, and that would be super. So thanks for watching and have a nice day.